And now we get to the 4 levels of breakthrough. What's interesting in this part is that you're going to think a little bit differently about your new idea. You'll internalize that new ideas are always a break outside of your comfort zone. But also, I want to sort of categorize what new ideas look like, because some ideas might be spectacular, but they're so far distant we'll never do them. And yet other ideas are really, really, really good, but they're so similar to what we're doing that we dismiss them totally. So it's important to understand the 4 different types of breakthrough. The first note when it comes to looking for the different types of breakthrough would be that by definition, almost any type of breakthrough that you're going to come up with is going to be something that is outside of your comfort zone. So when we innovate in times of chaos, that's the starting thing you got to get your team around is we are about to come up with uncomfortable ideas. They're going to look awkward. They're going to look unfamiliar, and they will not be as good as what is in our comfort zone. But that's the specific task when you're looking for an actual breakthrough. Now, as a kid, there's me, my nerdy little self. All I wanted to do was find a business idea. I was obsessed about trying to find my little business idea. But inspiration's everywhere. So how do you pick? So I had all these little business ideas. The funniest one, when I look back at it, is that I actually had a business of trying to sell random stuff that I call Jeremy's junk. So literally posters put up everywhere saying, come check out Jeremy's junk. I get what it means now. I didn't get it at the time. But that had my parents alarmed, thinking, wow, we got to get this kid a hobby. We need to help him figure out his new business idea. And the task that my dad would do with me is that he would buy all sorts of magazines that could be on cars, fishing, fashion, boats, babies. And we would flip to the sections with new inventions. And then he would say, what do you think about this idea? What about that idea? Could we try it? What if we went to garage sales? What parts would we get? How much would it cost us to make this? And what do you think the reader of this magazine, what would she think of? And on one hand, this fueled my hunger for new ideas. It explains a lot about who I became, but it also made me feel a little bit overwhelmed because I could never quite pick the idea that was right for me. I got into the corporate world. I worked in innovation and ran analytics for a bank, but I still didn't find my idea. So in 2005, before YouTube, before Facebook were really a thing, I coded up Trend Hunter, which was one of the world's first crowdsourced platforms. And really, I was making a digital version of that magazine exercise where people from around the world could share business ideas. And what I hoped was that someone, some trend hunter somewhere, would submit the little business idea that would be my inspiration. So I worked the daytime running innovation at the bank, and then at nighttime and on the weekends I coded and coded and coded and worked furiously to try and maybe get my inspiration. What I didn't expect is that a lot of people liked this idea. They wanted to come share concepts. There's a lot of us in the world that are looking for inspiration, and so our traffic grew very quickly. And by 2010, 11, we had more traffic than almost every newspaper on the planet. But no business model really associated with that. Just a little bit of money coming in from Google and a couple other advertisers in order to cover the bills. And at the time, as costs escalated, I really needed to figure out a business model. And there were a couple things that were presented to me more or less. But what I had suddenly started getting good at was getting traffic. With a team of 7 or 10 people, getting more traffic growth than the newspapers of the world. So my comfort zone was growing page views. And I thought, you know what? Forget about all these other ideas. I'm just going to keep on growing page views because that's what I know how to do. This is me stuck in my comfort zone. One of the ideas, which we're going to talk about, was the idea of expanding what our crowdsourced trend hunters could do, to make it a little more freeform so they could share anything. And we developed the functionality, but if I was to roll it out, we had to pay about $1,500 in a software license. So I thought, forget about it. Here's what I mean by all of that. This is a Trend Hunter portfolio from 2005. Going Like 60's the contributor. Here's all of his articles he shared. If that looks familiar, if that looks like Pinterest, it should look like Pinterest. It operated in a similar way. The difference, though, is that I'm showing you what Trend Hunter looked like in 2005, and Pinterest didn't come about until 2010 with something that was functionality we could have built for $1,500. But you know what? Who cares? We're doing good. We have way more traffic than Pinterest, so I wasn't worried. A year later, Pinterest is worth $1 billion, then 2 billion, then 5 billion, then 11 billion, then 30 billion. And I guess I missed out on not being Pinterest. But I remind you, we saved $1,500. That's an example of an overlooked opportunity or type of breakthrough that I would call a defining choice, which is that you will get presented to you at some point in your career something you could do. It's within your grasp. It's right there. It's a defining choice because it slightly alters your course, but it often is so close to your comfort zone, so similar to things that you've tried that you dismiss it. If you want to not dismiss it and identify a defining choice, you'd need to actually explicitly identify your comfort zone with your team. Is this an in-comfort zone thing we're looking at or an out-of-comfort zone decision? And you'd approach those differently. Find ways to push your limits, and if you find something inspiring, make the bold choice. This brings me to my next overlooked opportunity, consulting media CEOs. In 2011, when I needed to pay the bills, I had just come out with my book, Exploiting Chaos, and we had a lot of traffic. So we started basically getting a lot of inquiries from people who were going through chaos in their troubled times, and a lot of them were media CEOs. In total, I think I worked with about 30 or 35 media CEOs, billionaires, and boards of directors from almost every particular brand. In the book, Tony Hunter is the big case study. We go there, helping them go from bankruptcy to most profitable news organization for a given year. But by the time I'm helping advise these CEOs, that's paying our bills. And what I'm not really getting at is that they're going to figure this media thing out. The switch to digital for them with their thousands of employees is going to become easier than it is for us with our 10 once they figure things out. But in my arrogance of being an innovator, I felt like I had a lead that we were going to keep on maintaining. I didn't realize that the competitor, the traditional incumbents, would actually just transform what they were doing and reinvent. When that happened, instead of our traffic continuing to grow, it plateaued, and not only were we not growing, but because we anticipated that our growth curve was going to look like that, now we were in financial trouble and we were going to lose about $1 million that year, which would be really difficult in a tiny team of about 7 or 10 people and no venture financing. And so in that time period of desperation, I realized that I had missed out on what I now term a dismissible trend. A dismissible trend happens because you are an expert. A dismissible trend is the trend in your industry where your expertise makes you think you know better. I've already seen how this plays out. I already know how it's going to work. And it explains why so many iconic innovators have missed out on huge opportunities that were within their reach, or even things they had reinvented, like Kodak and the digital camera, Blockbuster and video streaming. All those are people missing out on a dismissible trend. If you want to see one of those and action it a little better, be humble. Ask questions, and recognize the blinding power of your own expertise. This brings me to the problem at hand, though. If we're in 2013 and you want to know what Jeremy was thinking back in the day, I'm trying to figure out how to not lose $1 million and how to not lay anybody off. And so in our search for what to do, I realized that one of the opportunities sitting in my inbox came from one of my Keynote clients at Nestle. It was from Sarah. And as I dug it up, I realized this email that was 2.5 years lingering in my inbox said, hey, if I give you this amount of money, could you make custom research, trend presentations, workshops, or even a custom version of Trend Hunter for Nestle? I didn't even reply to her. So I got an email 2.5 years later, hey, sorry I'm late. Are you still looking for this stuff? And she said yes. And this is when Trend Hunter did our pivot. And so we changed Trend Hunter to be a machine that could be used by brands for their innovation and into a research tool. Fast forward, and yeah, today we've done 10,000 projects for 700 brands, and that's become our business. That filled the hole, the gap, and now we're on a new trajectory. But I look at it and I still feel the failure in it because it took me 2.5 years to respond to Sarah. So if I had responded or thought about that 2.5 years earlier, we would currently be 2.5 years ahead. And so I call this type of breakthrough a workshopable idea, which means it's something that comes to you. It's not necessarily a bad idea, but you probably needed to workshop through it with your team. And if I had sat down and had a coffee with Sarah, or if my team had worked through it over a lunch break, we might have figured out this was an easy enough thing for us to do. We might have realized, hey, this is what Sarah does over a few months, and we can actually do that with 250,000 people 20 times faster. So why don't we do that? That slide comes from 3-4 years later. So for me, it's something that's agonizing to me because it's something I missed out on for more than 3 years. If you want to identify a workshopable breakthrough, challenge what seems possible, deep dive your curiosities, and pursue your next customers, not only the ones that you already have. Because everyone wants innovation to happen, but not everyone breaks from the path. And the lessons that we learn from studying breakthrough like this would be, be humble, ask questions, and recognize the blinding power of your own expertise. All of this brings me to the final idea that I've missed out on, my fourth biggest mistake, and that is the hidden gem. And you know what? I don't know what it is. The fourth mistake is probably the one I'm making right now. Maybe it was not realizing that we'd have thousands of people wanting to go to our webinars. Maybe it's the next pivot that we'll do out of COVID. But I know, and I motivate myself at all times by thinking about the fact that I'm currently missing out on something, and there must be another great idea within my grasp. But I can also make myself feel a little bit happier by knowing that if I didn't fail at figuring out my idea when I was a kid, I wouldn't have ended up coding up Trend Hunter. If I didn't fail at figuring out the online ad market, I wouldn't have pivoted us into a research firm. And if I didn't fail at becoming Pinterest, well, then I wouldn't be here talking to all of you today. But of course, I'd be at home playing with billions of Pinterest dollars, so it's a real toss-up. I want to summarize by saying you are going to create the future. You have so much potential within your grasp, but push harder, act sooner, and never give up, because you're capable of more than you think. And that is the end of our section on opportunity hunting. This is a big, wild world of opportunity, and it can be difficult to find the right little needle in a haystack that's right for you. So continue on with our next course, or use this time and opportunity to explore trendhunter.com, where you can find hundreds of thousands of ideas categorized by megatrends and patterns, ideally finding you something that inspires you and allows you to implement some of the techniques we talked about today.